Ryan Reynolds here for, I guess, my 100th Mint commercial. No, don't. I mean, honestly, when I started this, I thought I only have to do like 4 of these. I mean, it's unlimited premium wireless for $15 a month. How are there still people paying 2 or 3 times that much? I'm sorry, I shouldn't be victim blaming here. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/save. Whenever you're ready.
$45 upfront payment equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Taxes and fees extra. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes. See details.
Hello and welcome to Audiobook Connection, behind the scenes with the creative teams. I'm Becky Parker Geist and I'm your host. Audiobook Connection is your place to learn about the audiobook creative process and for authors to learn valuable tips on producing and marketing your audiobooks. This podcast is sponsored by Pro Audio Voices, helping great stories come alive through audiobook production and marketing. Hey, thanks for joining me today. We're going to go down the rabbit hole of the listener experience today. And I want to start off by creating a context, a kind of framework that we're working within so that you know exactly what I'm talking about when I refer to the listener experience. So we can think about lots of different people who may listen to your audiobook, you being one of them, but also family, friends, people who know your work, are followers already. And then also there are people who may listen to your audiobook who are not familiar with you, don't know you personally, and don't necessarily have any kind of experience of you and your content. And for most authors who are wanting to have a greater impact in the world, the bulk of your audience is going to be made up of those people, the people who don't already know you. Yes, it's likely to start with people who do, because as we gather people, as we let them know about what we're doing, as we find our tribe, we're initially reaching out to people who are close to us, who know or understand at least what kind of message we are trying to share with the world. We often will think of these people as our superfans, the people who are ready to go out there and share with the world what we're doing, what we're about, and what our message is, and who will direct them to our work. But again, if we think about what our bigger goals are in terms of having an impact, then really the highest percentage of your listener audience are going to be people who don't know you yet. So when I'm talking about the listener experience, I'm focusing on that segment of your audience, the people who don't know you. Let's start there. The focus for today's episode is really directed towards how you can review your audio with your audience in mind in terms of creating that great listener experience for those people who don't already know you. You may wonder why I'm making any differentiation there, but I'm going to try and explain more clearly why I'm making that differentiation in just a moment. Let's talk about what happens when you get your audio from your narrator and you're going to start to listen to it and review it. You may listen to it yourself. You may ask people that you know to listen to it. And how you communicate with those people when you ask them to listen to your audio will impact how they hear it. That's just a given. There's not really too much of a way that you cannot impact them in some way. And so my point here is just to acknowledge that. Acknowledge that you as the author and the people that you may possibly invite into your review process are not part of that segment of your audience that we're referring to when we're talking about the listening experience. So they're on that inner circle with you, and while they are going to be likely your trusted circle, and that's a very valuable place to gather input, it's important to acknowledge and recognize where they are in terms of how their experience and your typical listener in that larger segment of your audience, how those are related and how they're different. just to elaborate just a little deeper on how they're different, is that those people in your inner circle have an experience of you that they're going to expect is reflected in your audio. That makes sense, right? I'm going to listen to an audiobook that's been written by a friend of mine in a different way, with a different kind of experience than I'm going to listen to one from an author that I have no context or knowledge of. And now I want to turn sideways just a little bit and go towards what is the most important thing about your audiobook. Is it the words? Is it the message? Is it the impact that you're going to have with that message? Think about what is it that is most important. And the point I'm trying to make here is to really recognize something that we most of the time don't even think about. And that is that what matters in the audiobook production is that the listener experience, that experience for your average listener, that larger part of your audience, is going to be a really impactful experience. They're really going to get into the story. They're really going to absorb your message. What kind of impact are you trying to have? Think about that. And how do you want your audience to respond? Do you want them to intellectually think, wow, what a clever writer? Maybe you do. But maybe you want to get them so engaged in the story that that's all there is. Maybe you want to transport them to some other world, whether that's fiction or nonfiction. Because in a nonfiction world, the world that you're transporting them to is a world of possibility within their own lives. It can be a world of discovery, a world of possibility. And in my opinion, the most valuable thing you can give your listeners is that transportation, that trip to another world. Really engage them in it so fully that they're not even really paying any attention to the fact that somebody's reading this story to them or sharing this information with them. Isn't that the most incredible listening experience, is when you get transported like that to another world? Let's take a short break. And then when we come back, I'm going to talk about how you, as the author, reviewing your audio, can help your listener experience just that. Here at Pro Audio Voices, we love working with authors who have a big goal in mind. They really want to reach out to their audience around the world. We're here to help make that happen. It starts with our pre-production process, where we're evaluating and determining what elements of the audiobook we can leverage to both create an excellent listener experience for your listeners, as well as drawing them to your website to engage with you further. It continues on through the production process, making decisions that will enhance and support your big goals, as well as creating a great listener experience. But we don't stop there. Once the audiobook is live, we move on to helping you market your audiobook with the Audiobook Marketing Program. Come check us out at proaudiovoices.com. To schedule a call to talk about your audiobook project, click on Get Started. All right, so if we can agree that what we want to create for our listeners, for our larger segment of our audience that doesn't know us, an experience that is so engaging that they're in it, then here are some things that we can do as authors, as producers, to help create that for our listeners. Now, this can get a little tricky, but what I'm going to describe to you are some ways to try to listen to your audiobook as if you've never heard it before. Now, I don't just mean that you haven't heard this particular voicing of your content. I mean that you've never heard this content before. We're talking about imagining being in a place where you are not yourself and you are listening to someone else's audiobook about something that you may be somewhat familiar with, but that you don't know this content already. Listening from this perspective is actually the opposite of what most authors do. Many authors will actually review their audio, listening to it, while they're following along with their text. It will be a rare audiobook listener who listens to your audiobook in that way. And if they were listening in that way, it would be still with that experience of listening to it and reading it for the first time, not as if you're following along to check and make sure everything is the way it's supposed to be. Now, you may ask, well, isn't that my job here when you're reviewing your audio to make sure that it's just the way it's supposed to be? And I'll respond with just how what is supposed to be, the words or the experience. Because you won't know what the listener experience is going to be unless you allow yourself to try to experience it. And I'm not saying that it's going to be easy, because imagining yourself as not yourself is something that, yes, we actors know how to do, but it's not an easy thing for the average person to step out of themselves and listen in a different way. But it is by no means a skill foreign to authors, because isn't that what we do in the creation of the story? Is that we use our imaginations, we pretend, we make believe, we step into the shoes of our characters. Okay, we're going to apply that skill now as an author, stepping into the shoes of your audiobook listener. In order to do that, you really have to let go of judgment. You have to let go of critical analysis for the moment, for the listening time. Now, this can be especially challenging for people who are very detail-oriented. But it is possible, and it is the very best way to really determine the impact of your audiobook and whether it's being effective in that transporting of your listener to another place, to another world, to another experience. So often, when as authors or as technicians, when we listen to an audio with a specific review process in mind, we can very easily lose sight of the forest for looking so closely at the trees. It's a metaphor that's very appropriate for this context. And to give you a real basic how-to, a step-by-step, here's what I recommend. First of all, when you're planning to do your review, set the text aside, put on your headphones, and imagine, before you even turn on the audio, just imagine you're on vacation, or you're sitting by the side of the pool or at the beach, someplace that will relax you, someplace where you can really focus, and just listen to your audio. Try to imagine that you've never heard it before. And when you get yourself into that place and that space, then just go ahead and listen. Now, if as you're going along, something distracts you, and I don't mean something external, but I mean something in the audio distracts you, whether it's a sentence that doesn't make sense or a sound that shouldn't be there, things like that. Pause the audio, jot down the timestamp or, where it is in the audio and timing, and note which track you're listening to at that time. And then let it go and continue on. Just pretend that didn't even happen and that you're just continuing with your audiobook. I also want to make note that when those distractions happen, if they happen, then it is best to not pull out the text and see how you actually wrote it or do any kind of analysis at that point, because what you really don't want is to throw yourself back into that critical analysis, detail-oriented frame of mind. that frame of mind is not your friend in this moment. When you're done with your review, listening to it all through in this way in your vacation mode, then you can go back and look at all those places where you felt distracted and listen again and see what it was that distracted you. And then you can determine what the distraction was. Is it something that needs to be fixed? Or was it just a distraction because, like, I remembered writing it differently than the way I just heard it, or something like that. And then determine, is it important that it be fixed or not? Keep in mind that audiobooks do not need to be 100% word perfect. There are very few, if any, that actually are out there. What matters here, again, is the listener experience. Rather than being so attached to our words, we really want to be attached to and concerned about the listening experience that we're giving our audiobook listeners, our audience. If you follow this process and take my counsel on this, I thoroughly, confidently believe that not only will you have a better experience in the process, but that your listeners will be given the very best experience that they can receive from you. So just to sum this up, remember who it's for. Listen like you've never heard it before. Notice any distractions and take note of those. And let go of any preconceptions about what your audiobook review should be like. If you have any questions about this or would like to share your experience in reviewing audio and how that has been for you, what it's like for you doing the process this way versus other ways that you may have listened to audio before, I would love to hear your feedback, your experience with this, and also to know if this has been helpful. As always, you can reach out to us at proaudiovoices.com. Our goal is to inspire the world through the stories we bring to life. Thanks for joining us for Audiobook Connection, behind the scenes with the creative teams. Please take a moment to subscribe at audiobookconnection.com. The podcast is sponsored by Pro Audio Voices, helping great stories come alive through audiobook production and marketing. Learn more at proaudiovoices.com. Again, thanks for being with us, and please join us next week.
This podcast is a part of the C-Suite Radio Network. For more top business podcasts, visit c-suiteradio.com.